Who is he taking it with?
I don't know who the professor is, but one of the other guys, Mason. He and Mason are both taking it.
Haley?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because they bombed the placement test.
Council, it's 7 o'clock. We all set?
I'm ready. Ready as ever.
Why not?
7 o'clock, bring this meeting to order. Please rise for pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
Counselor Garrison?
Present.
Counselor Bickford?
Present.
Counselor Pesky?
Present.
Counselor Ward?
Here.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Here.
Counselor Mason is excused. Counselor Lund?
Here.
First item, please, Twyla.
Is under the public hearing. A, repeal section 7731, timber harvesting.
This is a public hearing for that. That's just a change in how the state will be managing the timber harvesting business. Everything will be administered through them, so anybody who has a change in how they're going to harvest need to go through the state. We won't take any role on that, which is okay with me.
It's just a section of the shoreline zoning part of it that the state is actually maintaining. The rest of it is still the same. They actually have come out with a new procedure, and in order to follow theirs, we have to remove our section. Open that public hearing. If anybody has any questions. Seeing no interest in that public hearing, we'll close it. Next item, please, Twyla.
Is a public hearing for the special entertainment permit, the Left Hand Club.
I'll open that public hearing, and this is for the special entertainment permit for the Left Hand Club. Seeing no interest for the public hearing for the Left Hand Club, we will actually close that public hearing. Next item, please.
Is audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council may come forward to address items or issues that are on the agenda for this meeting. Please use the microphone at the podium. State your name
Public.
and address for the record.
Audience participation.
Dot Fitzgerald, School Street, Lisbon Falls. It's not on the agenda, and it's supposed to be on the agenda, but I'm sure you've all heard that TD Bank on Main Street in Lisbon Falls is closing. This is going to be a hardship to a lot of people that don't have transportation or whatever. Even some local business people that I've talked to, it's creating a hardship. Is there anything at all that the town can do to encourage them to stay? I've wondered about getting up a petition, standing outside of the bank with a placards. Is there anything? I'd like to, it's going to be another empty business on Main Street and in town.
Anybody else for audience participation? Seeing none, we'll close that. Next item, please.
Audience participation response.
You can answer.
We have talked to some of the principals at TD Bank, and it wasn't a decision made by the local bank. It was a corporate decision, and the reasoning behind it, I don't know. But
I don't understand it either. They have 2 branches in Lewiston, one in Auburn, one in Brunswick. One in Lewiston doesn't even have a ATM machine. It just doesn't make sense, but even the tellers are not happy with it.
yeah.
They have 2 in Brunswick. They have 2 in Brunswick.
2 in Brunswick?
There's one in Shaw, or, yeah. No, it's Hannaford. One in Hannaford and one there.
I'd suggest anyone that has an account there, does business with them, should just give them a call and let them know that you'll be moving your business to a different bank if they don't want to do business where it's convenient for you. I think, if they hear from a lot of people, maybe they'd, be more interested in keeping their business here.
Every time I go in, I urge people.
Yeah.
After the manager, I told him he could talk to me for an hour and he's not going to change my mind.
All right, well, I hope the TV audience will hear and maybe give them a call too if they realize.
Tell him that TD Bank is no longer the most convenient bank.
Next item, Twyla.
Is the consent agenda. Any counselor wishing to have an item removed may do so now. Order 2013-133, to approve the minutes of August 20 and 27, a special entertainment permit and a liquor license for the Left Hand Club, permission for serving alcohol outside for the Friends Lodge, and a renewal victuals license for Good Time Lanes, Left Hand Club, and the Railroad Restaurant and Pub.
Make a motion to accept.
I second.
So what we're voting on is the consent agenda, as listed by Twyla. All those in favor?
Order pass, 6-0.
Next item, please.
Is under council orders, resolutions, and ordinances. Order 2013-134, Androscoggin County Budget Committee, cast of official ballot.
You should have in your packets the ballot. We caucused last week, week before, with the towns that we're in the same district with. And those are the names that we came up with. We had 2, and Sabattis had 2. There was nobody from Wales to submit a name, which is not unusual.
At this point in time, I guess a discussion of the council and what would be convenient, I guess, for some of the members would be looking to actually, from what I'd say, entertain a motion to accept Michael Bowie as a resident and actually Don Fournier as a selectman from Sabattis. And that's something I believe we do have to vote on.
You have to vote on, yep, this group, and sign.
Is there one signed form that you actually?
I can cast one ballot as soon as,
Okay.
yeah,
that's
and I
fine.
can pull this one.
Are you looking for a motion?
I'm looking for a
Okay.
motion.
I move that we accept Michael Bowie, a Lisbon Falls resident, and Don Fournier, a Sabattis selectman, as the 2 people that we vote for the Budget Committee.
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Order pass, 6-0.
And you'll sign that petition down. Thank you.
Okay.
Next item when you're ready.
Order 213-135, to set the rate of interest for delinquent taxes.
Every year before we commit taxes, we used to get a card from the treasurer of the state of Maine to recommend the maximum tax allowed, or percentage interest, which is 7%. It has been 7% the last few years. This council and other councils have usually gone with the recommended 7%, but we have to have a vote on that prior to committing.
In the past, it has been 7, and I've received a year that we were looking at 11 or more only because of interest rate. Typically, the goal of this is to set a rate that's higher than what people would make if they kept the money in the bank, so it gives them incentive to actually pay their taxes and not wait till a long period of time. I don't know of any CD or bank or interest rating or a money fund right now paying 7%, so I think people would still be more inclined to actually pay it, and it's at a number that actually, if someone did get a little behind, it's not going to add up quick enough to actually cause too much hardship. I'd entertain a motion, and then we can have discussion after.
I'll make a motion to vote 7%.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion on council from your perspective of the 7%?
Currently, it is 7%
Yep.
here. All
Yes,
right.
it is.
So we're just voting to maintain the status quo. Okay.
Now, do we need to make any motion to adjust when it begins, since we're a little late in getting our tax bills out in the first place?
Yep, I think we'll actually do that when we actually talk about the
Okay.
tax
Just
with
wanna make
Bill.
sure it doesn't
Yep,
kick in.
yep, understandable,
Give people enough time to pay up.
correct. With no other discussion, all those in favor?
Order pass, 6-0.
Next item, please.
Order 2013-136, carry forward adjustment.
Jessica will address that.
Hello. Last meeting, I came before you with the carry forwards and transfers, and verbally and discussion-wise, everything that I gave you was correct. Numerically, on the file that you subsequently voted, there was a carry forward for the fire department, which was for the MEMA radios grant that we received, that was omitted from the total. So I'm just coming back before you tonight to increase the carry forwards by that $17,000, which makes the new carry forward total 600, excuse me. Yeah, $656,302.64. So
Could you repeat that number again, please?
$656,302.64.
And what was the change, I guess, from the fire department? What were those numbers?
Yep,
17,000, that was changed to,
The original number versus the new one.
yep, let me just grab
at
that
first I
here.
thought you were just talking about the fire department. I was like, wow, that's a change.
By some of them.
Yeah, that's $600,000.
Almost a whole fire truck.
The fire department had $17,219.50 that was received as a grant for
Okay.
the radios through MEMA. And I had it written down in the description as being included, but I omitted the numbers. So it's just increasing the carry forward by that 17.
By that amount.
By that amount.
Okay.
Yep.
And that's
You know-
money that we had.
You know
that is-
why the money hasn't been spent yet? I'm just curious why, if they've got the grant, why haven't they spent it?
It is actually on the next warrant. I believe Chief
Okay.
just got the
Okay,
invoice
so,
of
all right.
what was that. Yeah,
It's
it
just
was
ongoing, it needs to be
Yeah, it
done,
was
okay.
just the timing of when we actually received the monies versus when we could get the radios and the invoicing for them.
Mm-hmm. All
But
right.
as far as I know, the radios have been received and now we've been invoiced, so
Now we have to pay the bill for the
Now we have
radios.
to pay the
Okay,
bill
right,
and-
yeah.
it'd be great to have the carry forward
Oh, I
funds
understand. I just
do
want to make
so.
sure it wasn't something that's been sitting there for 6 months on the books.
No,
Okay.
no, not
Do you
at
know
all.
when we got the grant?
Off the top of my head, no, I don't.
Okay. So I guess my next question would be, how do we not get it in the first time? You know, was it? How do we
Because
miss
I
it?
have to go through manually and select all the accounts. I work with the department heads to find out within their account structures which ones they need carried forward. And Chief and I had gone through and he had pointed that one out in my haste to get through year end and financials and dealing with the auditors. I wrote down the description, and when I was going through to manually key them in a format for you guys, I just missed it. And so when I went to go put them into my file for the financials, it obviously wasn't balancing, and it was by that 17,000 that I missed, so.
Any other questions for council? Pretty much what I do, I guess at this point, I would entertain a motion to accept the difference of the carry forwards for the fire department of the $17,219 figure.
I'll make
Would
that
that be
motion.
correct?
I'll second it.
All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
Thank you.
Next item, please, Twyla.
Order 2013-137, revenue sharing adjustment.
Prior to Bill committing taxes, we have to make an adjustment back when we adopted the budget. We also included in that motion to offset the taxes with the revenue amount, which was 2.8. We didn't have those numbers at the time, and what the state was going to do to make those adjustments came in July. So we have to go back and revisit that, so we have the right amount of money that we're putting in for the revenue sharing, which is, I think, $210,000 less than what we did before. So
Which would be a total number of?
what
do
was
we
the
have-
total amount, Bill? 500 and something. Revenue sharing, what we're going to commit?
The new revenue sharing
New
amount
number,
will
yeah.
be 570,000
570.
570 even?
versus the 780 that we had.
Right.
So, and we can actually have some discussion after there's a motion. I entertain a motion that we actually, I guess, adjust the revenue sharing adjustment to the 570,000. Again, this was unknown earlier, waiting for the administration at the higher level to tell us what we were going to get, if we're going to get anything at all. And entertain a motion to accept.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
And then what I'll do is ask for, is there any discussion on that? Unfortunately, we all know kind of what happened. We were just waiting for that amount. I guess all those in favor?
Thank you.
Order passed 6-0.
Next item, please.
Order 2013-138, repeal Section 7731, timber harvesting.
And again, as we mentioned earlier, this is just a procedure to allow that section to be changed so the state's new harvesting protocol is actually allowed to be set into that section. I entertain a motion to accept.
Make a motion to accept.
Second it.
All
This
those in
would be a
favor?
roll call vote.
Thank you, Twyla.
Counselor Garrison?
Yes.
Counselor Bickford?
Yes.
Counselor Pesky?
Yes.
Counselor Ward?
Yes.
Counselor La Rochelle?
Yes.
Counselor Lunt?
Yes.
6 yeas, 0 nays. Order passed.
Next item, please.
Next item is other business. Assessing update, William Van Tynen.
Mr. Bill. Bad knee.
Bad news, I say, you haven't been beat up lately, have you? I mean, it is a pretty rough job, I realize, but
Now, I'm going to try to go over two things. One is just how we're doing on the revaluation work. We're progressing around town reasonably well. The particular maps that we have done are the U maps 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, 15, and 30. And we have most of the R maps, the rural maps, done. We've completed the listing on maps R1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 9. And I'm reasonably close on the data entry to the properties that we've listed. We're listing about 1,000 properties a year over a 4-year period of time. We just started the 3rd year. So things are progressing reasonably well, and I think in a timely manner. I will really put the most emphasis on analyzing sales and trying to fine-tune our appraisal schedules so that we correspond with sales towards the latter part of the project, which is scheduled to be implemented for your property taxes in 2015. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to finalize that now because the market may be different in 2 years than it is right now. So things are going reasonably well. I have people in the field, especially at least one person, just about every single day, listing property in Lisbon. Do you have any questions about the revaluation and how it's going on and the kinds of things that we look for?
Are you seeing a lot of drastic changes in properties?
We really go out and look independent of the old information. It's not like we visit a home or a business property with the old property record in hand and see if there's been a new addition added or a new garage added. We really go in independent. The idea is to be essentially free and independent and not influenced by the old data. So the only time we really consult an old property record card is, and this does not happen a great deal, but if somebody refuses to let us on the property and we have to make an estimate, we'll go to the old property record card and see what the last person who was at the property sketched the property as. That's very unusual. It doesn't happen routinely at all. So it's hard to answer your question. I'll have a better idea as I get close to the end of the project. One of the things that is routinely done with the software that I'm using is that as we update the values, we'll have an old to new valuation report, which helps us. I mean, it helps us identify potential errors where something is way different than the typical norm in a neighborhood. And we might take a second look in the field to make sure the data we have is correct, or the calculations are correct. And at that point in time, I'll have an idea if certain types of property or individual properties are way different, way out of the ordinary to the typical trend. But at this stage, I don't. And the primary reason I don't is because it's a completely new project. We go out with a blank card, we sketch the property, we list all the property details, we make some notes about the topography of the land, and we really, it's free and independent of the existing records.
Great, thank you.
So basically, the software you have will basically tell you if one property is paying X amount of dollars in property tax with the current scale. Once you put into the next scale, they're not going to be paying triple the tax rate. It would flag that as saying there might be something wrong here. Is that what you're trying to say?
It
At
only
least give you
flags
something to look
the
at.
old value and the new value, and the
If it's way off.
yeah. If it's something that goes up way less than is typical, or way more than is typical, we'll flag it from the signals in the software to double check it. But that's later on when we are finalizing the values based on, we'll probably use sales primarily from 2014 and 2015 in updating the valuation of the town for 2015. We may go back into 2013 as well.
Any other questions, council?
Bill, how far along would you say you are as a percentage in doing the entire audit, and when would you estimate you'd be done with the entire thing, based on how it's gone so far?
Well, the schedule that, and I'm not checking the fine print, but my recollection is that we are going to try to send out valuation notices in calendar year 2015, probably before we start the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2015, so that we'll have ample time to meet with people, review their valuation, take comments from people about what they believe is the accuracy of our data, so that we'll have time to meet and verify and check on things after people have a valuation notice. So I'm on target to do about 1,000 properties a year for this year and next fiscal year, and then hold the hearings.
So we should be in pretty good shape. And any other questions? Good.
I have a quick question. I did have somebody ask me recently what, her mom was startled by someone coming to check the value of her property, and she didn't answer the door in time because she's elderly. And so she was asking me, do we send notices ahead of time, or how are we doing that?
We haven't been sending notices ahead of time. We usually make an attempt to find somebody at the property, and oftentimes at least a second attempt to find somebody at the property. And then we will send we'll either send or leave essentially a calling card that says we stopped at the property to try to get the information we need to do the tax assessment valuation of the property. No one was home. If you can call and make an appointment, we'll try to do it at a time where we can arrange to do an interior inspection with you. And whether we leave if it's a property that looks like it's not regularly occupied, we'll try to definitely make that kind of a follow-up request with a letter. If it's a property that looks like it's regularly occupied, we're more likely to leave a calling card, something that we hang on the doorknob and ask them to call for an appointment.
Okay, and you generally do it neighborhood by neighborhood, or you follow your maps and do a section at a time?
Yes.
And, because,
The town is divided into tax maps.
right,
So that's the order we go in. We take a
Right.
whole map at a time and try to begin listing it and finish listing it before we go on to
Okay.
the next map. At least individual by individual. I may have one individual working on one map and another on another map.
okay. I think the question was just in terms of, she didn't know who was knocking on her door, and I know that the folks who are doing this have identification, but she was wondering why somebody didn't say, we're doing these neighborhoods for the next 2 weeks, or something like that, but I'm not really sure how that would work out if we needed to do that.
We can try to do that a little better if you think it's a good idea to, I think we have tried to get out a bit where we're working, but if you think it would be good to do a press release or to do some kind of a newsletter with something that you send out, or put something on your cable TV channel that we're working on a certain neighborhood or neighborhoods, we can try to get the word out a little more effectively than perhaps we have.
All right. I'll talk with Steve and see.
And you're doing as, right now, as you know, because this is taped, so I think it is good to actually just have, now typically if you were to leave a notice, I mean, is it really uncommon for you to, so to speak, do, say, measurements of a house if there's no one home? Basically, the biggest thing you're looking for when you leave a notice is looking for an interior inspection, right?
That's correct.
Most of your exterior
We do
inspections.
usually, not if they have a big angry dog, but we usually do measure the house from the outside, and we usually take a photograph of the house, and we usually take some notes on the exterior characteristics of the house, the type of siding, the type of roof, whether it's replacement windows, what kind of foundation it has, concrete or concrete block or stone, the things that we can readily observe from the outside.
Okay, great.
I guess I just make I have one comment on that, and then one more question. I think it's very important to the people of Lisbon to, if you see someone in your house, in your yard, and you don't get proper identification, or if you have a concern, it's definitely worthwhile to call the police or call someone to just be identified. There is a lot of strange things that happens in people's backyards, and we just don't want people to assume that it's the right or the wrong person. So if you have a genuine concern, please follow up on it, and I'm sure no one's going to be offended by the idea of being asked for identification or having someone stop over to check on them, because I think it's just, in this day and age, I think it's very important that you just don't assume that it's the assessor in your backyard. So, and I'm sure none of your folks would have any problem with anybody checking up on them or asking for identification, or
No.
if that not to happen, to call the police.
Dispatch has all the information, who's in the field,
Yeah.
from Bill's company, so.
The last question I had is, the commercial and everything should kind of wrap up all at the same time, right? I mean, we should be all set with the residential and the commercial all in the same time frame.
Overall, yes. You have some very significant properties in town. Central Maine Power, the Warumbo Hydroelectric Plant, the Maritimes and Northeast Pipeline, that I've essentially already done, because they're very significant components of the property tax base of the town. I didn't have the utmost of confidence that they were done thoroughly, so I did them out of order. I adjust them diligently to be on the same ratio of assessed value as other properties statistically come out to be. But those properties I've already done, and I've done them at 100% and then equalized them, adjusted them by the valuation ratio of the town to be fair and equitable with the overall ratio of the town, which this year is about 85%.
85. Good. If no other questions, we'll have Bill move to a second part of his presentation.
I do have one quick
Sure.
question. So for say the properties that we're valuing now, and then in 2015 we enact it for the tax bill, will those properties possibly already be out of line because of additions or some changes they could have made?
We do try to keep up with additions, garages, new houses, as diligently as we can. You have a code enforcement office, you have a building permit requirement, and every building permit that you have issued, we get a copy of to check against our records, and we go out in the field and we pick up the new deck or the new addition or the new garage, the new house, whatever it may be. There certainly is the possibility that someone may do something without the required documentation at escapes notice. I don't think that's a major concern, but there certainly is a possibility that somebody builds a deck and doesn't get a building permit, and I don't know about it. But I think that those kinds of instances are reasonably few and far between. You've had a tradition of requiring building permits in the town of Lisbon for a good long time, to the best of my knowledge.
One last question, then I'll stop. Is it normal for you to see in other communities a 4-year long evaluation, or typically is it all done at 1 year?
I think in a town the size of Lisbon, it would be unusual to do it in 1 year. I think it would be much more typical to have it probably a 2-year time frame, just because of the size of the community. A lot of smaller communities complete it in a 1-year time period. I think that given the financial situation that many towns find themselves in, it's probably getting more common to stretch it out over a little longer period of time than might have been done 7 or 8 or 10 years ago.
Right. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? He's out front of us, so it's a good time to get him. Next item, I believe is Bill, you're just going to go over the,
All right, now
Pepper.
the other thing I'd like to review with you, if you're interested, is the tax rate calculation of the town.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tax rate calculation used to be,
Sorry to interrupt you, Bill, but do we have enough for the citizens in case they want to follow along?
I don't, but I'll be happy to try to get some copies made so that that can be done.
I think we have someone that can make some copies for us.
And until that's done, I'll just go over some general information that maybe doesn't require following along with the spreadsheet that I've given you. The tax rate used to be relatively simple and straightforward. It was simply calculating the net amount that needed to be raised by taxes and then dividing that number by the total taxable valuation of the town. And now it's a little more complicated. And one of the reasons it's a little more complicated is your town has several tax increment finance districts. And the idea behind the tax increment finance districts is that you shelter some of the valuation from the effects of intergovernmental funding and use all or a portion of the tax incremental revenue for a special purpose. And in all of your TIFs, except for primarily one, but at times another, you have as the special purpose credit enhancement to the developer of the new valuation. You decided, as you approved TIFs, that you would assist the developer with the financing of the project by making some of the tax incremental revenue available to them for a future period of time. One of the TIFs you amended a couple of years ago, and that's the TIF with Dingley Press, to continue to provide credit enhancement to Dingley Press for the rest of the term of the TIF, but also to capture the additional increment for the town to fund economic development activities. Most recently, you adopted a TIF with Premier or Kelly Business Park. And on that TIF, you decided to give, based on meeting certain criteria, up to 60% to developers within that Premier Business Park, 60% of the incremental tax revenue. For this year, there's a minor increment in valuation, not a great deal. And there's no event that triggers the credit enhancement payment by the town. So I have calculated the increment in the Kelly TIF times the 60% maximum credit enhancement percentage, or captured assessed value percentage, for the town for special purposes, not for any private developer for this year. So that's some general information about TIFs without going into too much in specific that one needs to relate to this tax calculation sheet. Another thing that makes the tax calculation a little more complicated than it used to be is that there is a business equipment tax exemption. And 50% of the business equipment tax exemption is reimbursed to the town by the state of Maine. And that has to be accounted for in the tax rate calculation. And a third item is that there, since 1998, is a homestead exemption. A homestead exemption is $10,000 at 100% of value, and it's adjusted by the town's valuation ratio. So if a town were at 85%, it would be $8,500 exempt from taxation. And the state reimburses the towns for 50% of the lost tax revenue from that tax exemption. So that has to be accounted for in the tax rate calculation sheet. So there's two columns on this spreadsheet, column C and column D, that present a tax rate calculation in a somewhat different format. The first calculation is done on column C, and you can see that I have a real estate value and a personal property value that's taxable. That's $453,144,697. Then I have a homestead exempt value of almost $19 million. And then on line 9, that's multiplied by 50%. And that 50%, just under $9.5 million, is added to the valuation of the town because of the 50% reimbursement from the state. The Betty value, business equipment tax exemption value, is just under $9 million. That's also multiplied by a reimbursement rate from the state of 50%, and that's added to the valuation of the town. And then on line 12, I have a negative number of $11,280,212. And that is the captured assessed value in all of your tax increment finance districts times the appropriate rate that's captured. So for example, on the second page, you'll see Gendron Realty, and their tax increment percentage is 40%. So the total increment is just over $1.8 million, and you have an agreement with that property to pay them a credit enhancement amount of 40% of what they pay on the tax incremental revenue. And I've done that for all of the TIFs, and I've added that as one number, converted it to a negative number, and it's a deduction in column C of your valuation. Then, so that gives us a total valuation base in column C of $455,780,295. Then you have the gross appropriations that the town needs to raise from taxation. One of those appropriations is the county. The county gives each town in the county a warrant that says this is the amount of tax that you need to pay to us in the next fiscal year. That is $542,736.69. Then there's the municipal appropriation, which in your case is $6,786,163. In reviewing your budget documentation to get ready to set the tax rate, when you had a motion and approved a motion for a gross budget, you included the county tax as part of your municipal appropriation. Technically, it's a separate appropriation, and I certainly have to show it on the tax commitment forms as a separate appropriation, so that on line 20, the number that I have is the number that you approved, I think it was at your May 23rd meeting, less what you had estimated for the county tax at the time. And then you have your school appropriation, which is $5,712,936. That all totals up to just a bit over $13 million. Then you have other revenue, which is one of the things that you addressed on one of your agenda items earlier this evening. State municipal revenue sharing is estimated at $570,000. The state maintains a website, the State Treasurer's Office, that provides what the estimated revenue sharing was when the legislature, at the end of the session, passed a budget package. And that website indicates that your projected revenue sharing during the fiscal year is just a little bit more than $570,000, but I've estimated it at $570,000. It's off from the actual projection by $1,000 or $2. Then you have other revenue from various sources in the municipality of $2,110,060. So the net amount that you need to raise by taxes is the difference between line 23 and line 30. So it's $10,361,775.69. The minimum tax rate is the result of dividing line 32 by line 16, the total valuation base of the town, and it's 0.022734, or approximately $22.73 or 74 per $1,000 of valuation. The maximum tax rate is based on dividing line 34 by line 16, and state law provides that an assessor of a town can raise up to 5% more than a minimum amount that needs to be raised to round the tax rate. And the maximum tax rate is developed by multiplying the net amount by 1.05% and dividing that by the total valuation base of the town. And that would be a rate of 0.023871. And tentatively, I've chosen a tax rate of $23 per thousand, 0.023, which would raise a tax of $10,482,946.79, which is an overlay, or it's over the minimum amount that needs to be raised by $121,171.10, which is an overlay of about 1.11%. And that's what I am proposing at this point in time to raise for a tax commitment and set for a tax rate. Now on column D, it's essentially the same type of calculation, except that instead of adjustments to the valuation, there are adjustments to the appropriations and to allowable deductions. So for example, on line 21 in column D, there's a TIF financing plan amount, and that TIF financing plan amount is $11,280,212, the number that's shown on cell C12, converted to a positive number, times the tax rate in cell C40. Likewise, the Betty reimbursement shown in column D on row 28 is the reimbursed Betty value times that same tax rate, and the homestead reimbursement is the reimbursable homestead value of $9,472,260 times the tax rate of 23. I have worked in a number of towns that have tax increment finance districts. And the way that I calculate the amount to be raised for tax increment financing, to the best of my knowledge, to the best of my understanding, from the 30-some years that I've been doing this, is best calculated and can only be reasonably accurately or precisely calculated in the way that I have done it here, to make a deduction from the valuation of the town and then multiply that sheltered assessed value in the TIF district times the actual rate.
A lot of simple math then, right?
All simple math, yeah. So that is what it looks like. I think, and I don't have the best hearing in the world, but I think I heard someone mention the possibility earlier when you discussed the interest rate, and it may have been you, Mark, of adjusting or being a little more lenient on the first interest date. And I certainly don't have any objection if that is what you decide. There were a few loose ends that had to come to you for resolution that really I didn't know about until I was ready to set the tax rate. And that was that essentially your other revenue is a hard resolution of, it doesn't say this much other revenue from within the town plus the best revenue sharing estimate. It says it's this amount of money. So I really didn't feel comfortable committing the taxes without having you revisit that resolution. And as long as that was an issue, I thought it would be a very good idea if you addressed the interest rate issue as well. So if it's later than I have committed taxes in the past, and if you want to revisit the interest rate, you certainly have no resistance to that idea from me.
The rate itself, we wouldn't be looking at, but I think what the discussion was earlier was the idea that,
date, right.
the due date, I mean, it.
Make sure the citizens have a fair chance to get their payments in without being docked because they didn't have enough time. You know, if we give people right now, it'd be less than 2 weeks basically, and it's not enough time for some people. So I think, you know, if you could make sure they get the full 30 days from when taxes are actually mailed out so that they know and they have a chance to get their bills paid.
Does council feel that's fairly, I mean, to me, that seems pretty, pretty fair in the sense, the idea of from the time the bills are actually mailed or put out, we give a 30-day period for interest. And then, as I was mentioning earlier with Mark in that discussion and Steve, was if there is some hardship along the way as far as for some type of finance that actually for some reason that doesn't work, I know the town will be open to, Steve would be open to the idea of someone coming in if there's further hardship because of the delay, but I think the idea of setting the base principle of 30 days from the time they're mailed out is a good starting point, and then if there's other hardship from there, they can come in to visit the tax department or Steve to see if there's anything else that we can do. Does that seem fairly fair to you, Bill?
I think that it's fairly common for many towns to set their interest rate based on a date or 30 days after the commitment, sometimes the mailing of tax bills, whichever comes later. I think that's a very reasonable approach. With the mailing, if I commit the taxes today or tomorrow, it takes a little bit of time, not a great deal of time, but it takes a little bit of time to produce and mail the tax bills. So if it was done with a mailing date, as a practical matter, I mean, it's got to be printed on the bill when it's due. So it would be based upon a hopefully conservatively targeted mailing date, so that people would have at least 30 days. If they got the mailing done a day early, maybe 31 days, if that's the day, the time frame that you decided upon, before the date on the tax bill triggered an interest. The thing that I think is at least in a lot of town meetings towns, is the tax collector is not given any leeway. If a town meeting says interest is charged on September 16th, or 30 days after the commitment, and that's it, the tax collector does not have within his or her jurisdiction the ability to waive that interest. So if what you're suggesting might be some flexibility, I think you have to build it into your motion.
And only reason I say that, because there was a lot of concerns I hear from people, is just the idea when working with their financial institutions, that sometimes some of these are out of their control as far as when those come through, you know what I mean, when they get put through. And I'm not sure the scheduling on that, and some of it may be easy to take care of, some of it not, but I mean, I think we can put some discretion into that motion, so allow, if there is something that is out of someone's control, that they can actually work with that. So basically, do we need to actually make a motion and vote on?
30 days.
So pretty much what I'd do is entertain a motion to actually extend the interest penalty for 30 days from a reasonable date, whether it's a mailing or whatever is actually printed onto the tax bill, and then allow some discretion after that 30 days for the tax department or the management to actually work with people if there's some type of other hardship from that delay. I mean, it is a delay that somewhat is in our fault, so.
I'd say you could say another 30 days beyond that at the discretion of the town manager for, extenuating circumstances.
Yeah, from the tax department.
Right.
Bill, when are you I'm sorry.
No, go right ahead.
Bill, when are you expecting to mail the taxes?
As soon as- I don't mail the taxes.
Or when are you expecting them to go out?
I expect to finish the tax commitment papers contingent upon the resolution of the interest date issue before I leave Lisbon tonight. And I would expect that it might take 4 or 5 days, but I'm not positive.
We should have everything out by Friday. That's the date we anticipate, if it gets committed.
All right. And I had one question on the calculation real quick. For the overlay of 121,000, do you remember what the overlay was last year for line 44?
I think it might have been 110.
Yeah, 110. That's what I think. Yep.
One of the things to keep in mind about overlay, the law doesn't say a whole lot about overlay. It just says that it's my responsibility as your tax assessor to exercise some reasonable judgment in assessing an overlay. Beyond that, most towns, including Lisbon, don't get 100% of the property taxes paid in the fiscal year in which they're billed. So the chances are very, very excellent, probably a sure bet, that you will not receive as much as is needed in the fiscal year from taxes that are received in the fiscal year, because not everyone will pay their tax on time.
If I remember correctly, didn't we have overlay left over from last year didn't we have some leftover in a transfer we ended up using?
We used it, yeah.
So, I mean, I know that we can't really control it, but, you know, I know $10,000 is $10,000, but if it, you know, affects the tax rate a penny, you know, it's just a concern of mine that we're gonna go 10,000 additional this year when we had some leftover last year.
One of the things that I do try to do with the rate is I do try to round it off a little bit. And I try to keep it simple. I don't try to go to triple digits or anything. I try to round off to an even dollar amount or 10 cents if I can. Don't always. Last year it was 22.26. But I try to make it a reasonably round number.
Okay.
So I guess, just looking at some dates, I guess if it would entertain a motion to actually allow for the extension of the interest penalties, and pretty much what it would be is be 30 days from September 6th, which I guess would be October 7th if we do it correctly, but I would just more go from September 6th, which would be this Friday, 30 days, and then still leave it up to discretion for another 30 days for the management and the tax department to allow for other issues that may come about from the delay. Would that seem fair as a motion?
I think the 30 days is we should do at least 30 days.
Yep, 30 days would be, like,
30 days is really standard.
would be pretty standard, and the idea of allowing the extra 30 days.
Oh, I
on
agree. I'm just
discretion.
saying, I think it's good that we do at least the 30 days.
Yep. Entertain a motion for that to move forward?
I move that we extend the interest penalties to 30 days beyond the date of mailing of September 6th, with leniency at the discretion of the town manager and tax department, giving our citizens the opportunity and ample time to make their tax payments.
And that's for 30 days, an additional 30 days.
An additional
Don't
30
want to leave
days,
that
yes.
open-ended forever, so.
So I actually have one motion. Do I have
I'll
a second?
second that.
All those in favor?
And Bill, before you go, I have one question, what is the percentage change from last year's taxes, just in terms of a percentage? You know, would that be around 4% or
You know,
somewhere in there?
I didn't
Don't have that
didn't
exactly.
calculate a percent change, and I don't have a calculator with me, but
Okay, but
this year it's $23, last year it was $22.26.
I'm sure Greg has a calculator in his
On his pad.
iPad over there. He can get it for us in a second.
So that order passed 6-0?
Yes. Thank you, Bill.
Come on.
Thank you.
Appreciate the good work.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you.
Okay, my simple math doesn't work this week.
There's no simple math when it comes to taxes. Next item, please.
Town managers report?
Just a few things. The upper dam, I told you, they expected to be here today, but because of the torrential rains we had over the weekends, they've put it off for another week. They expect to be here next Monday. All they're doing is removing the debris from
Bless you.
the dam when it collapsed and stabilizing the bank. If you're looking at the dam to the left, it's not supposed to change any of the water levels at all. I got an email just to verify that today.
That's good.
Which was nice. That's what I
Quick
thought you
response.
said, but it's, yeah. So, it's being paid for by the Atlantic Salmon Federation. There's no tax dollars involved in that at all. Also, just to remind the public that, next Tuesday, the 10th, we'll be having a public hearing on the Rumbo Mill, at 7 o'clock at the Lisbon Community School. Staff will start off with the presentation. Myself, Amanda Bunker, our planner, and Tracy Stuber, our economic development director, will give you all the facts that you need to hopefully make a decision if it goes to vote. I finished up all the paperwork today with Mr. Davis. In the Davis Cemetery, all the deeds have been signed. All the money has been transferred from the Davis Cemetery Association to the town of Lisbon. And that was all done through one of our local banks here in town, the Community Credit Union. We have 3 good banks in town, Androscoggin, and it's 5-star, and the credit union, and service was excellent. They did all the notarizing of everything, and that went very well. And that's all I have. Any questions on anything else?
Question for Steve on this report? Seeing none, next item, please.
Is the Water Department report?
Water Department.
Water Department bond. Report on the bond?
I guess, one of the reasons this was coming up, and there was some discussion from council, was the idea of, the water department did have a bond that they wanted to bring forward in the November vote. It was actually, and part of that procedure was the idea of actually doing a public hearing. And I know there was some discussion, and I believe is it still the intentions of the water department to actually use the same public hearing night we have as for yours, or, I mean, that's what was listed in,
That was advertised.
yeah, yeah.
The only stipulation to that is that if we have our engineer come down, we have to pay him,
Mm.
of course. And if there's gonna be a lot of discussion on the Rumbo, we're paying him for whatever.
What time was actually listed in the paper? Was it the 7 o'clock time frame, or was it just a date?
I think it was just 7 o'clock
7 o'clock?
start, the normal start time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with the nature of your, how long, do you have a rough idea what the engineer's presentation will be? I mean, is it fairly brief, or is it, or, I guess if you were to put a time frame on your presentation for your public hearing discussion?
As long or as brief as you want, we can tell him, give a 10-minute overview of what's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
Questions from the audience is what's going to
yeah,
drag it on.
yeah, yeah. And it'll probably be the same discussions as much of the evening. So, to me, it actually makes a lot of sense combining them into one, so that the public is there, you have the greatest amount of people. Time frame, I guess we'll just plan on being there for a while, that's all. If I guess we'd actually entertain the idea of discussion for council. One is the idea, and Mark had brought this up earlier, that typically the council actually votes the idea of moving a bond about, a potential bond to public hearing. This has been something that the council has been well aware of, this project that they've been working on. Now, was it the bond, is there two separate bond items? There's the one for the new water tank on Upland Road, and the idea of the project, Frost Hill project, where you'll actually be renewing the pipe on Frost Hill.
Would you just have them give a brief overview so the
Sure.
public can hear?
If you want to just give a quick overview of the two projects that were there, and then the council, I think it'd be nice to get a vote from council just to move that forward and to entertain the idea of allowing them to work at that public hearing.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I'll take one for Gina, too. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.
Still got one for yourself, Paul?
I do.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay. Paul Adams, General Manager at the Water Department. I gave you each a packet with two different packets in it. One is for the standpipe project, and the other is for the Frost Hill water main replacement. So we'll look at the first one, is the standpipe. Again, I remember at the site plan review, a lot of you were there, so I'm not really going to get very deep in this. I'm just going to breeze right over it. On the front page is a picture of a tank similar to what we're planning on building over on Upland Road. The second page is a little closer picture of it with a valve building that's also going to be built on our site. This tank that is in here is 42 feet by 42 feet. Ours is going to be 55 by 55. The next page is basically just a rundown of kind of why we're doing this, other than the two tanks that are currently in place need maintenance. This is a diagram of the hydraulic grade line, and not to get real technical on it, but basically the current tanks, as you can see, the grade line dips considerably when you have water flow, whereas a new tank, a single tank on the elevation that we're going to build it, will maintain that hydraulic grade line at that level, no matter what the flow is. And so I just wanted to point that out. The next page goes into some of the math. And again, I'm not going to list them all, but you can see there that it goes over what painting costs today, just the regular maintenance inspections and that kind of thing. And it goes out 40 more years as to what it would cost to do painting. Next page is a preliminary cost estimate from Durgo Engineering. And that list there just runs down some of the major items that are going to be required to build this new tank. And again, this estimate, as you can see, the date was over a year and a half ago. So I'm sure some of these numbers are different at this point. And the final page is basically a life cycle analysis showing what the initial capital cost of the new tank would be, and annual maintenance fees to keep it up, and basically no future costs in maintaining it. These tanks, the one we're going to build is what they call virtually maintenance-free. It's a cement tank, and there's very little maintenance to do on it, which, again, would be a bottom line of $1.7 million. So that's that for the tank. Are there any questions?
Now, I know you've had trouble, you said, getting water flows up through the Upland Road area there, that the pressure isn't very good up there. Are you going to have new pumps somewhere to get, water up to this tank to fill it up?
Well, the answer to that is no. There will be no new
Are you gonna upgrade the
pumps or
or-
anything. We may wind up upgrading some of the current pumps just
push it
to
up the hill
boost it a
there,
little
yeah,
bit
so-
higher, but no new
Okay,
pumps.
do you have that numbers for what you'd spend on upgrading pumps or anything? I think that's gonna
I
be part
think
of the
that was
project.
on one of those sheets.
Yeah.
$4,500.
Yeah.
From one of the discussions I remember with the engineer, the pumps that are in that new pump house are fairly new and capable of actually allowing more pressure. It's more the idea of ramping them up and control.
Right, there's a new line up there, so I know you can.
Exactly, yeah, so-
Drop and push up there, and just thought, you must have some additional capacity to get it up and fill up the tank.
Sure.
And then you can let it run back downhill from the tank.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Paul, I do have a couple questions. For your diagram here,
Yeah.
if I was just looking at this, I would think that we're gonna get one tank and get rid of the one in Lisbon and one in Lisbon Falls. What is the plan? Is there a plan, obviously to use the new tank, but what are we gonna do with the other two tanks?
Well, currently, the long-term is different than the short-term. The short-term, the tank in Lisbon Falls would be decommissioned right away, once the new tank was in service. The tank in Lisbon, because it's going to be very similar in elevation, the water commissioners haven't decided yet whether they want to leave that in service until it needs further maintenance, and at that point, not spend any more money and just take it out of service, or take it out of service right away. I think the discussion was leaning towards leaving it in service as long as it's serviceable, and then once it's not serviceable, just decommission it.
Glad to ask, because that was the first I heard about the Lisbon Falls tank, so I'm glad I asked that. And then, on the page where you have your preliminary life cycle,
Yeah.
for the paint costs, the Lisbon Falls tank, when do you think that would need to be painted? 2 years, 5 years down the road?
Oh, gee,
Engineer had those actually laid out when that.
yeah,
next
I
cycle was
didn't
coming through.
print out that sheet, but he did have that.
Okay, that's
Um,
fine.
I'm figuring in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then another question I had, with this project, what do you think the increased rate would be for your users for the water? Do you have a projected rate increase?
I really don't. I did try to get Maine Rural Water to work on that for me, but they haven't come up with a number yet. Just going based on the dollar amount in the last bond that we borrowed, I'm thinking maybe $10 a quarter to the base rate.
So you think about 25 cents? Is that what you're saying? I guess I didn't understand your response.
No, right now, the rate, basic rate for water is $41.88 a quarter.
Okay.
So, if it went up $10 a quarter, it'd be $51.88.
Okay.
But again, that's just,
But that's something you
Base.
possibly by the public hearing may be able to have, be a more of a firm number or more of a calculated decision. And the same thing, because I was mentioning, Steve, one of the some of this discussion would be really important that night, because some of it actually, some of the bond discussion is going to affect taxpayers directly, and some are going to be indirectly, and mostly in the water ones, it's kind of indirectly. It's not actually something that the main dollar bonded isn't going to effectively direct to the regular taxpayers, but the difference in the water usage with the percentage for our fire protection, that would be an amount that would actually affect the regular taxpayers. And I mean, it would be nice maybe to have just some rough calculations that night either way on how those work, and I'm pretty sure, I would imagine we get something. Yeah, that we should have some type of answer that night, but.
yep.
That's the heavy question right now is,
Based on bond bank too, so what the land rate's gonna be?
It would be, yes, yep. Right now, they are fairly
You
reasonable.
can get an
yeah.
estimate, you go on the bond bank website, and there's a place where you can do rough calculations.
Yep.
But they don't guarantee, obviously, the rates, but they'll give you an idea of what, if you're gonna do a 30-year bond, what that is for the payments and
Yep.
each year, so.
For the, Bill,
I did some rough calculations as far as rates are concerned. If we ask for a 10% raise or a 10% rate increase, that's going to amount to $4.20 per quarter. This is all based on minimum charge. At 15 would be $66.30 per quarter. 20% increase would be $8.40 per quarter. And on an annual basis, it would be $16.80 for the 10%, $25 for the 15%, and $33 for the 20%. Now, if we went, this is, as I said, this is all minimum. And for, not everybody, a lot of people are not on minimum. But if we went with the 20%, that would increase our revenue by approximately $2 million for the year, which should be more than ample to pay for a 30-year bond. Matter of fact, I would expect it to be far less.
Far less.
We don't know the rates, we haven't received any bids for doing this yet. So there's a lot of,
at that rate, you almost get paid for it the first year.
I'm sorry, that was over a 20-year.
Oh, okay, you said the first year, I was gonna say, wow, that'd be pretty
Yeah,
substantial.
for years straight here, over a 30-year period, which should more than pay for the project. We do have some funds available that we plan on tying into this to reduce the amount that we have to borrow.
I guess, yeah, I guess from council's standpoint, I guess if you could actually just summarize it fairly briefly that night, just kind of give it an idea, even kind of a range, because we realize that the bonds, the amount of interest in bonds change and the amount of years, so, I don't think anybody would be looking for a exact dollar, nor can we, the night we're talking about our bond, give a really exact dollar that night either, except for a calculated or estimated amount, but I didn't mean to interrupt you, Bill, go ahead if you want.
Okay, that's fine. The only thing that we have firm is the price to pay for the property.
Yep.
That's the only thing we've got firmed up. And as far as the pipeline is concerned, I don't think we've had a firm price yet from, no, hasn't gone up to bid yet.
Will you have a dollar amount for that bond to go in November on the public hearing? Because you will need, I believe, a dollar amount for that bond to move it forward off that public hearing. You do, okay, all right,
Based on other
Pass.
projects that we've done,
okay,
inflated a little bit.
understandable. Yep, and going by footage and pipe and,
Yep.
yep. Sounds pretty straightforward. I mean, as of council, go ahead.
One question, once you decommission these other tanks, what happens to the tanks?
They get, well, the one in Lisbon Falls will get tore down.
Is that included in the price, or is that?
Yes, yes, it's on the
Yeah, there's a-
sheet.
I didn't see it, I must have missed it. Thank you.
The one in, again, depending on whether they decommission it right away or they keep it going, once it's done being used, currently, there's two cell tower companies attached to that tank, so it will remain in place and just be an empty tank at this point for those cell towers.
Could those cell towers be moved to your new tank? It's not this right location?
Well, there was some discussion both on the water department's end and on the public. The public really voiced a lot of dissenting opinion. They don't want cell towers in their neighborhood. The water commissioners discussed it. They kind of agreed with them and said we wouldn't do it. We did discuss it with one of the companies, Verizon, and they were not interested at all of moving their cell towers. So it doesn't look like that's an option.
Yeah, I was just curious.
It's in the deed with Mr., proposed deed, we haven't paid for it yet, with Mr. Upham, that no cell phone towers would be put up on the property. The only thing I did talk to him about was the possibility of the town having a communications setup attached for
Yeah.
fire and police and dispatch. And go back to your question, Mr. Garrison, some communities have taken these old tanks, cut a hole in them, and used them for storage. And, of course, I believe the engineer said the estimated life on the Lisbon tank could easily be another 100 years. But with some proper maintenance. But that means that we can use just take care of the rust spots on the outside, that kind of stuff. As far as the Lisbon Falls tank is concerned, we've got to wait and see what happens. Because when we put the water pressure up here on this new tank, we got to see what it's going to do to our pipes in Lisbon Falls. I mean, we don't want to create so much pressure that when Grammy opens the faucet, she gets blown into the next room, you know. I mean, that could easily happen. So, we're still, that's an experiment. We're trying to, we can't answer that.
Well, I appreciate that, since previously my hot water tank likes to vent itself quite frequently, and it's discontinued that the last year or so, ever since the new line went in, and I appreciate that. But prior to that, I was, yes, getting a lot of variable pressure at the house, so,
Well,
thank you.
particularly down on Davis Street and whatnot, that area of town would have a increased pressure, and we don't know what's gonna happen on it. It's all, we'll see.
To be seen.
So I guess the discussion from council to move it forward is one, the idea of just, I'd like to take a vote from council to actually allow them to move forward with the public hearing and bring their bond presentation forward. One for bringing it forward, and the second for actually doing it on the same night. I realize there may be a lot of information for people at night, but it's also nice if we have a large venue to actually have the most people, because all these same people will probably be the same people voting in November, so they must will be quite educated, I hope.
Since it's already been in the paper,
Yeah.
I think our
Yeah.
hands are kind of tied there.
Yeah, well, we can actually put another ad in saying that we have moved it now. So I entertain a motion to actually, to allow the water department to actually bring their bond forward and to have it at the same public hearing that we do that
I'll
night.
make that motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Order passed 6-0.
And then the second one is, I have no problem if you folks, if it's gonna be a fairly, and I realize we can't control the audience part of it.
Yes, we can.
We can to a certain point, yes, but, I mean, I don't mind if it actually goes first, because ours will be a little bit longer presentation, as long as we can actually work. And now, do you plan on putting this on a PowerPoint, or is it strictly gonna be a verbal presentation?
We probably will just do a
Do a
verbal,
verbal?
yeah.
Okay.
And
And-
something like this.
And, I mean, one of the things that we gotta understand is part of the requirement is to have a public hearing on it, and we can actually do it, but it doesn't mean that you can offer other information at one of your meetings later on to actually follow up with that information. So we can actually limit it to a certain point to meet the criteria, and then say any other further discussions can be brought forward to one of your meetings. I think that's fair.
Get questions from the audience that we don't know. We could try to answer and find out the best of our ability, answer the questions later on, so.
Yep, and actually have it available at one of your meetings in between. Is there any question for the council on that? I mean, I think I think we can work together on it. I think it's kind of nice to actually have, again, I'm hoping we have a large venue of people, and hopefully they'll be there for the same reason, so. Good. Anything else that you want to bring forward? I mean, Bill?
Did you want me to go over Frost Hill at all?
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
to explain
actually,
it,
yeah, yeah, if you have that right there, that'd be good.
Yep. Okay, the next packet is Frost Hill Avenue, and the first map there is actually what is referred to on the tax map as Androscoggin Street, but
Used to be the old main
it's
196.
it's Old
through there.
Lisbon Road is
Right,
what I've
yeah.
been told, but they must have renamed it when the new
Cut it
Lisbon
off,
Road
right, when they
went in.
rebuilt it there, yeah.
Yeah, but there is a pipe in that, it's actually a gentleman's driveway now.
Right, is that actually the water main that runs through that?
Right,
His
it does.
driveway rather than the street over there,
Yeah,
yes.
it does. And that stretch right there is approximately 1,000 feet, and it's what we call asbestos cement pipe, which is, one of our weaker areas in the system. And so that's the one section that we're going to replace. And if you turn to the next page, that is actually Frost Hill Avenue. And you'll see on there, from the intersection of 196 and Frost Hill Avenue up to, I believe it's 18 feet from the hydrant that's at the top of the hill there.
Just in front of your house, Ken?
Not quite that far.
Not quite that far?
Right.
Over by the church then?
Right.
By the
over
church?
by the church.
Holy Family, Holy
Yeah.
Trinity parking lot, basically, or entry?
And that is roughly 3,300 feet. And again, that is the asbestos cement pipe. And that's what we're planning on replacing there as well. The next page is a breakdown of the estimate of what it's going to cost to do this project. The first page, that's all of the labor that's involved in replacing that pipe. And then the second page is the actual material to replace that. And these, again, these numbers are from 2011, so we've been working on this project a while.
Adjusted estimated cost, right?
Right, right.
Understandable.
Well, you'll have copies of what we have tonight for the public when we have that here.
We certainly can. I don't know how many we want to make.
It's going to be a full house, so make a lot.
Yeah, I would assume that we actually have them on the back, and if someone, you can actually have a request sheet, if someone wants to request more, then maybe they can put their name and, they can pick them up at the water department or something. I wouldn't,
Then we could email them to them,
yeah, absolutely,
if
yeah.
they want to give us their email.
That may be an idea under the public hearing information. Maybe we can actually put that on our website, the actually of the PDF for both of them, so if someone wants to print them
Sure.
off prior to the hearing, maybe we could do
Do you have
that.
this on your website?
No, I just made this up this
Yeah,
evening,
okay.
so I'll get it.
That's something that you could put up there, so we'll put information, and we'll put it on our sign out here, go to
Sure.
your website.
Yep.
whatever it is.
I hate to cut down a couple of trees just to have
I
them
know,
stacked in the
I
back of the
know.
room. And Bill, you actually had something you wanted to add?
Well, I just want to add to what Paul said. About 10 years ago, ETTI put a line underneath the Sabattis River. They bored underneath and put in a line, so on the Androscoggin Street, I guess it's called, it would be just connecting that to what ETTIs are put in. And they also bored underneath 196, to come up somewhere beyond where the lift station is for the
Sewer?
sewer department, right, and that would be connected onto that, so that piece under 196 and under the river does not have to be done.
Right.
That's all done some years ago.
I got a question for you on that. The night after a meeting when we had an unfortunate break on on Androscoggin, which I actually said, we talked too much. We lost our water for a brief amount of time. Actually, water is actually, we actually had water service a little bit later. Was that a result of the upland connection allowing it to backfeed through?
It was not.
It was not. You were able to,
What we're assuming is, if anybody has noticed, they did a lot of logging out of that area this summer. And they've been running log trucks and skidders and a lot of things up and down that road, or driveway as it is. And it's really not up to that kind of standard to have the heavy equipment run on it. And with it being asbestos cement, we're assuming, pardon?
Very, very brittle.
Yeah, we're assuming, that pounding is what caused that break.
but you actually shut that circuit off that night and didn't fix it the next day, right? No, I guess that the flow of water that came back to our house later that evening, was that actually because you didn't have to shut the water off there?
Right, correct.
You actually were able to leave that open?
We isolated the break and,
Okay.
right.
Good deal. I weren't sure if it was the idea of the upland was able to backflow that amount of distance, and you were able to just shut
Well,
that off by the
it
bridge.
did. It came around the other way and came back down to
Okay.
you. Yeah,
So I guess that was the question. It was, without the upland road, we would have probably been out of the water
Right.
for the night, right?
Correct.
I guess is the question.
Well, not necessarily,
No.
because it would have been backflowing from the standpipe in Lisbon Falls, so you would have gotten that one
some,
too.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything you said.
Okay, I was just checking. Get ready for bed, turn the water on, a little bit trickle, then nothing, so.
So, Paul, I have
I
a
had an
question for you.
idea.
How old are the lines that you're looking to replace? When were they put in, do you know?
Ooh, that would be a
Probably
question
Bill?
for Bill.
Or Bill's dad?
The historian, it was put in about early 50s. There's two sections in town that has asbestos pipe, cement lined asbestos pipe. That's one, and the other one is up on Main Street in Lisbon Falls. The reason that was put in is because Lisbon Falls went dry for one whole summer. They ran out of water in Lisbon Falls, and they had to pump the water from Lisbon to Lisbon Falls by fire truck for the whole summer, pretty much in the summer. And it was right after that, at a town meeting, they decided to put in the pipe.
So it wasn't connected before the early 50s?
The
Yeah.
two systems were not connected before that.
Interesting. So it's old pipes.
Lot of history, yeah.
Need to be replaced.
Any other discussion from the folks in the water department? And I guess it would be an interesting public hearing night. I think if people want to come out there, we'll have a variety of things to discuss and communicate with, and so
Can't blame you guys.
we, it's gonna be open for suggestions all the way through, right? With that being said, any other discussion for council on the water department information? I guess it's moving forward then. The next item, please.
Counselor Communications.
I guess I'm saying.
You go.
I'm going to use the television media. We're going to have this rural mill public hearing, and I've been out campaigning and talking to a lot of people, and I just want to want the people to please let us know what you want. Call the town, leave a message on my answer machine. My answer machine will take a lot of messages. Come to the garage. Come see me, talk to me. Even Larry Fillmore does that once in a great while, and he's kind of stopped when I put him to work, so. But I won't put you to work. I just want to hear yes or no. I don't need to get chewed out. I just would like to know what you would like to see. I mean, right now, to me, it's 20% yes, 20% no, and 20% I want more information. I need to know what you want to know. And as we all know, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So I just need more people to try and get involved a little bit with this and let us know which way you want us to go with this. A lot of us here at the council can actually look down the road. We know it's going to cost money. I pay taxes here too, and it hurts, very much so. But I'm willing to do it, but not against my constituents. So if they don't want me to put this out to bond, I'm not gonna. So I just need your information, and please help us do this. That's it.
Anybody else for communications?
Yeah, I got a couple. Steve, are we gonna have the, finance committee look at the bonds for the water department in town, or what do we decide on that?
We will send them the information so they can look at the paperwork.
All right. And my other question
Weigh in.
all right, and my other question I had, so the town and water department have been working closely with some citizens to come up with either a water sewer district or keep it as is or vice versa. Where are we on that? Are we gonna have something on the ballot this year for that, or is that not gonna make it?
I can actually speak to that. At this point in time, after our last meeting, there was a lot of discussion on just really we knew why we were getting together to speak, but the idea of the end solution is it wasn't a real simple answer. Not simple enough to have anything on this ballot. I spoke to Bill the other day, we're gonna get together and try to fulfill the agenda for next week. A lot of things happening right now with the town and with the water department as far as getting this stuff ready for the bond, so, if for some reason it doesn't seem like next week's agenda is gonna work properly, then we'll probably move it on to a little bit later date. I think what we're trying to do is find out where the common ground is and just trying to find on how we can work forward. The dialogue has been really good. I think everybody's kind of got some neat information. I think that the main thing that I've got out of it, there is no easy button to push. I think anything that we do is actually gonna take a lot of time and a lot of dialogue to actually come up with a proper solution. And the solution may be a lot more simpler than what we've been looking at. So I think as we move forward, I think our next meeting, myself and Bill will have to get together to find out where, at that point, we move forward, because that was one of the discussions we had in our last meeting is, what is the end game and what does that look like? And I don't think any of us really had an answer at that point in time. So I will meet with Bill and we'll actually come up with an agenda, and if it looks like it's something that we can do next week, as we discussed, we will. If not, we'll actually postpone it to a later date while there's a lot of stuff happening with these bonds coming forward, so.
And then my last thing, I just want to piggyback on what Roger said. I've only heard from 9 people regarding the mill, so please reach out to me by phone, email, however you see me. It's really important that we hear from the public on this. It's a big topic. It's going to be a price tag that we have got to look at and react on. So I'm here for the citizens who elected me on the council. So please make sure that you are contacting me to let me know how you feel, because it's a big change for Lisbon, spending that amount of money, and it's gonna, we're gonna have to invest money into it to make it what we want. So please make sure you get involved and voice your concerns. Thank you.
Ma'am?
I think fewer than 9 people have contacted me. We heard some loud and angry voices when we attempted to have our first hearing, but they were very few. And I was approached after that meeting by some people who weren't able to be heard that night, and I'm looking forward to seeing them at the next hearing. Everybody's voice counts, and whether you talk with us before a meeting or by phone or by email in advance of that hearing, but most especially if you go to that hearing, we need to hear what everybody wants to say, what everybody wants us to do. And if 40 or 50 or 60 people show up and there are 9,000 people living in Lisbon, I have a hard time believing that that low number of people are telling us really the big picture. So please contact us, regardless of which counselor it is. So I think we're all willing to hear, so.
Greg, anything to add?
Actually, I have 2 things. One, thank you for the emails concerning the passing of my mother. I do appreciate the support. My family appreciates it. I'd like to say one thing. Dot, thank you for bringing up the TD Bank thing last meeting. While I did not open my TD Bank account in Lisbon, I have 2 separate accounts. I still haven't been notified, even though my mailing address is in Lisbon. I have neighbors who have accounts in Lisbon. If you hadn't brought it up, we probably wouldn't know that they're closing their branch.
November 1st.
I have addressed it with TD Bank on 3 separate emails. All 3 pretty much said, gee, thank you for contacting us. The first one, they said they were sending it on to the branch manager, which I asked them why, since he didn't make the choice. The last one simply said that they're passing on to the appropriate business area. However, they were nice enough to say, if I still had any questions, to call them. And for anybody listening, the number they gave me is 1-888-751-9000. So feel free to give them a call and let them know. Sure. 1-888-751-9000 and speak with a customer service representative. And that's as far as I've gotten with them after 3 interactions with their customer support. And I still haven't gotten a letter saying that they're closing the branch.
Put on hold for half an hour.
Most likely. Last time I called, and that wasn't related to this, but yes. Because they're America's most convenient bank.
I've talked to the local branch manager and one of the bigger managers. He's the one that was giving me and all of the customers in that day that spiel. And I told him he could talk to me for a half an hour. It wasn't going to change my mind that closing it was a mistake.
I have my personal opinions on why they're doing it, and I will not share them at this venue.
Mark, do you have any last comments?
Yeah, I had a question actually for Steve about something I've been pestering you about all year, is getting those lights, some kind of lights out front of this
They've been
building.
ordered.
Have you been ordered? No, this is the ones in the ground they're gonna put in there, or the ones on the poles?
One's in the ground.
The ones in the ground,
I've asked for
okay.
2, one
Okay.
at the entrance and one on the exit.
Excellent, we can get those in there before the
His direction
snow
to-
falls,
to
all
Get
right.
those done before the winter.
Excellent. September, I want to check in with you and see about
Please do.
that, so. Give me a call the day they're done, I'll come down and take a look.
Won't be able to afford to light them, but we'll have them there anyways,
We'll have
right?
them there, but they really need something there, because it's very dangerous getting out of there at night.
Yeah. I just want to add one thing. We actually just recently had a 196 master plan meeting, and we actually had the town council, the school, the facilities, and the planning board, and it was a very interesting night. There was a lot of discussion. And again, a lot of people had some discussion. Actually, I was outside at like 11 o'clock that night talking to other people and trying to put the idea that this master plan is really important. And one of the reasons having the school and everybody aboard is if it shows what Lisbon really wants to be in the future. And if someone was to come to Kelly Park and want to make a big investment where they'll be here for, bring people in for a number of years, when we actually had a developer, our night with Positive Change Lisbon, the developers from around said one of the first things they do when they go into an area is ask what their master plan is. And they look at the master plan to see if the town has any forward thinking, to see if they have any hopes and dreams of what their town will look like 10 years from now. And so I think it's really important, and we got a lot of input that night, and then as we move forward with it, hopefully everybody stays quite in tune what the master plan is and some of the final results, because it will be what people will look at when they come to town to see what we're looking to do in the future. So not everybody agrees, but the most important thing is everybody's having dialogue and everybody has an input of what's there, because that final master plan will kind of tell if this town's actually thinking forward or not thinking at all. So
It's on the website.
good stuff.
All the information's on the website, anybody wants to see.
Next item, Twyla.
There is no executive session, and motion would be in order to adjourn.
Entertain a motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor? Thank you, everybody. We have stuff to sign.
Read the Lisbon report if you
Oh.
want to know how people think.
Read the what?
Lisbon reporter at Maine.net.
No. Hey, guys. Roger? Yeah. He'll go away. You got to sign this. Mark, I didn't know your opinion, but